Welcome to the October edition of Catalyst Wellness Alliance and our monthly Asian American Pastors webinar about mental health. My name is DJ Chuang, and I'm the Executive Director. And I'm also the Director of Christian Asian Mental Health, which is a program of Catalyst Wellness Alliance. And we recognize that every Asian American church needs mental health ministry, and we are here to provide coaching and resources to help churches launch mental health ministry. And we work hand in hand with Catalyst Wellness Alliance, which is a alliance, a network, an ecosystem that brings together pastors, churches, clinicians, researchers, nonprofits, and institutions to learn from each other, to collaborate, and to work together towards this massive challenge of mental health in our generation and in our times. So I'm honored that you have clicked play or joined us live on this webinar, and we are talking about how to launch a mental health ministry and why we must. This will be a short webinar in about 30 minutes. I'll give you a quick overview of why and how we must launch mental health ministry, and then invite you at the end to join a cohort of other churches that are preparing and ready and eager to launch mental health ministry as they hear this presentation or see our website. So the reason, the challenge of the mental health crisis in America and around the world, particularly among Asian Americans, are threefold. And this was presented at a White House initiative Asian American Mental Health Summit in July of 2023. I was honored and privileged to be in attendance and invited to this summit with 100 mental health leaders from around the country. And I was just starting out in this mental health world as a advocate and as a person with lived experience. So I was not leading a significant nonprofit or community-based organization, but I was active with a podcast called Erasing Shame, and I happen to be a board member of Asian Mental Health Collective, where we have a directory on the internet with 3,000 Asian American therapists, both faith and non-faith clinicians, and we also provide subsidized therapy for those who cannot afford it. And during that White House summit, they described three of the major barriers that are in the way of Asian Americans getting help and getting care for their mental health challenges and struggles and diagnosis. Number one is accessibility, and that's referring to language. Accessibility for Asian Americans is very challenging because nearly 2/3 of Asian Americans do not speak English in their homes. And so that means if you were to look at all the mental health providers, the professionals, the clinicians, the counselors, and therapists, the majority of them don't speak Asian languages, and yet many Asian Americans speak Asian languages at home. And so if you're not able to speak the same language, you can imagine how difficult it is to share your thoughts and feelings when sorting through the complexities of pain and stress and challenges when it comes to mental and emotional health. Number two, the affordability is a barrier, the lack of affordability. Mental health and behavioral health is often not covered by health insurance. There are also a significant portion of Asian Americans that don't have health insurance. And for long-term care, health insurance often does not cover the cost. So typically, health insurance might cover 10 sessions or so for cognitive behavioral therapy, which gives some short-term help to address symptoms for those experiencing mental health challenges and have a diagnosis. But For those with severe mental health illness, they need ongoing care for long-term, for months and years, and that is simply not affordable. And you know how expensive healthcare is, who can afford it, but some need it and can't afford it. And that's a unfortunate situation of those who struggle with mental health in particular. And third is the lack of availability. So out of the 2,000 Asian American therapists, faith and non-faith, and then for Christian Asian mental health, we've compiled a directory of Asian American Christian therapists and clinicians around the country, and a majority of them are not available, whether it's because they're not taking on new clients or they have a waiting list. When you're in need, you can't find someone available, even if you could speak the language of the therapist and you could afford it, they may not be available. I myself have a mental health diagnosis. I've been living in recovery, thank the Lord, for 24 years with a bipolar disorder. And during a time of transition from one doctor to another, I was waiting 2 to 3 months to find a doctor who could provide the prescription I needed to maintain my mental health medication. And I would add a fourth barrier to our mental health challenges, particularly as Asian Americans. And these are common across the board for any ethnicity or racial group, but particularly these have a certain flavor for us as Asian Americans. And the fourth one is acceptability. And this is speaking to the shame-based cultures and stigma that we experience as Asian Americans. And because of these four barriers, Asian Americans are the least likely of any racial ethnic grouping in America to seek mental health treatment. Asian Americans are 3 times less likely than their white counterpart to seek mental health treatment. And as a result of this situation, and approximately 20 to 25% of adults and youth are experiencing mental health challenges, but they're not getting the help they need. And one of the most tragic statistics that has recently been confirmed again is the leading cause of death for youth and young adults who are Asian American is suicide. And that's often connected to depression, anxiety, and other life challenges that are connected to mental health. But the hope is we can do something about it as the church. Now, Dr. Thomas Insel wrote a book titled Healing after he retired from the National Institute of Mental Health. And he noted that mental illnesses are certainly, they are medical problems, but he discovered that the cure for the crisis are not just medical, but also social. And this path of healing, built upon what he calls the 3 Ps, people, place, and purpose, is more straightforward than we might imagine. Dr. Insel offers a comprehensive plan for our failing system and for families trying to discern the way forward. This is the description of the book that you can purchase from Amazon or any other bookstore. And for me, as a follower of Christ, when I heard about these 3 Ps, Dr. Thomas Insel recognized and observed that treatment for symptoms that psychology and psychiatry provides is not enough for someone's long-term recovery. They need these 3 Ps, people, place, and purpose. And for me as a Christian, I realized I had an aha moment. This is the church. The church provides that community with people and a place and purpose for living, meaning for life, and hope for healing and for life's journey. The church can be that instrument, that channel of blessing for people struggling with mental health. Furthermore, another book that just released this summer, actually this April to be more precise, by Dr. James Sells. He's a professor of psychology in Regent University of Virginia Beach, and he says this: the church should play a prominent role in providing mental health care for several reasons. First, the need is growing at an alarming pace. Second, The cost to treat those in need will bankrupt the healthcare system, pointing back to the affordability challenge when it comes to mental health. And third, even if everyone had the funds to pay for the service, the number of clinicians required to treat those in need is beyond the scope of our educational system, pointing to the lack of availability. And this is across the board, not just Asian Americans, but Americans and even those around the world. And the book makes a compelling case, evidence-based research, and from his expertise as a professor, that people need mental health care and support beyond the clinical hour. Oftentimes, for those who can afford it and can find a counselor or a therapist to meet once an hour, they have another 167 hours to deal with their symptoms and to get through this thing called life. And the church can play a prominent role in providing that mental health care and support. So I commend that book to you. The slides to this webinar will be in the description of this video and in the show notes. So that's worth a read to help your church and your leaders get grounded in why your church must launch a mental health ministry. Now, I'm providing a very simple model for how your church can launch a mental health ministry. So the fifth A in my talk today is activate. There are things that your church can do right now to care and support for those who have mental health challenges. And having been a pastor, having gone through seminary, I've learned that pastors speak in alliteration. So they love to use words that start with the same letter. So 5 A's describe the first 4 A's describe the challenge. The fifth A describes the action, and then the 5 S's describe the solution. So I've put together, based on my experience in being involved at Saddleback Church, which is my home church here in Lake Forest, California, in Orange County, and through my years of living with mental health recovery myself and talking with church leaders over the past 5 years, I've put together this 5S model for mental health ministry. And it's simply this: if your church will do 5 things on a regular basis, your church will cultivate a continuum of care that offers care and support for people that struggle with mental health challenges. And the 5 S's are sermons, stories, seminars, support groups, and Sabbath. Let me take some time to unpack each of those. First, sermons stop stigma. And the picture here is Dr. Ed Stetzer. He's a prominent Christian author and speaker, currently the dean of Talbot School of Theology at Biola University here in Southern California. And during one of his talks at a mental health conference in 2016, I believe it was, he said this, that sermons stop stigma with regards to mental health. We need God's perspective on our human condition. And throughout the Bible, and there's other books that are in the CAMH blog that I can refer you to if you'd like to see how you can craft a sermon that shows how the Bible speaks to our human condition when we experience depression, anxiety, worry, suicidal ideation, stress, burnout, and grief. And 1/3 of the psalm is related to lament. And so sermons stop stigma. We in the 21st century, our vernacular and our felt needs is mental health and mental illness. And so the church cannot be silent about it. The church, the Bible, actually has a lot to say about it, and we can connect people in a relevant manner to their very felt need. And this particular photo is alluding to a little trivia. Someone was watching a sermon from Dr. Stetzer and counted that Dr. Stetzer adjusted his glasses 74 times in 36 minutes. And to this person that was very detail oriented, found it very distracting. So a little humor as we go through this very serious subject. So sermon stop stigma. We would do well to speak about mental health in your sermons at church. It helps people to realize God cares about our mental health, spiritual health, relational health, physical health, and all around health. And so the Bible is not just a spiritual book, it is a complete book about health. Secondly, stories erase shame and stop stigma. More than half the challenge when it comes to mental health in particular is the shame and stigma associated with it. It's not an easy thing to talk about, but we must talk about it. Brene Brown, prolific author, shame researcher, and author of numerous books about shame, has noted that shame festers in silence. And so if we are going to erase shame and stop stigma, we must talk about this subject in an honest and healthy manner, because part of the human condition, even though we don't see it, it's not as measurable or scientific as, say, diabetes or hypertension or cancer, but it's just as real. It affects people's feelings and thoughts and behaviors, and the pain is real. And we, as fellow human beings, can show love and compassion and not stigmatize or shame, cause people to hide when they are struggling with mental health situations. So to do that, stories help to connect the heart, help us to humanize the situation. The photo here is when I had an opportunity to share my testimony of recovery from mental health at a Hope for Mental Health gathering at Saddleback Church. So every time I share it, I've come to realize that it opens more doors for ministry than when I just opened the Bible. So over the past 10 years, I've always said yes when the opportunity arises for me to share about mental health and how God has given me hope and healing through the journey. And your church can do the same. The second. And as another example, stories erase shame and stop stigma. I was able to be part of a team that launched this podcast in 2018 called Erasing Shame. So going on for 6 years, 150 plus episodes, into our 7th season. We have honest and healthy conversations at least once a month, sometimes as often as every week, encouraging Christian Asian mental health. So that's a resource for you, freely available on Spotify, on Apple Podcast, on Amazon Music, and on YouTube. So testimonies from everyday people and occasionally with experts helping us to understand how to become healthier and deal with our mental health challenges, as well as other things that are challenging in our shame-based cultures. Okay, we're at number 3. So sermons stop stigma, stories erase shame. Third, seminars equip everyone for mental health. Now, part of the reason we are uncomfortable talking about mental health is not a lot of people enjoy talking about philosophy or psychology or psychiatry and these intangible things of life, but they're very much a part of our lives. And seminars provide that education and equipping for us to become a little more comfortable and educated for things that we don't know, because we're uncomfortable with things we don't know. So seminars are very helpful to help us understand how to take care of ourselves and how to help with loved ones and family members that might be dealing with anxiety and depression. And I mentioned those two because those are the two most common symptoms when it comes to mental health challenges. And then all of us will experience times of grief and loss, stress, and some of us will face burnout. Some of us will face other life challenges that affect our mental and emotional wellness. And on this slide, I suggest to you a online course called the Sanctuary course, and it's available at sanctuarymentalhealth.org. It's a free uh, online video course with 8 videos, discussion guides, and transcripts. So you can just watch that video in a Sunday school class or schedule it for a couple sessions over several weekends in your church and equip people to understand how the church can play a vital role when it comes to becoming a community that cares for people in their mental health challenges, how we can offer the ministry of companionship, and how we can understand what the Bible has to say about it. So, and then in addition to this course, I've got several others that are listed at the CAMH website. And another opportunity is to partner with clinicians, as the previous book, Beyond the Clinical Hour, suggests, how churches and counselors can partner together to work towards mental health. It's not only an educational opportunity, it's a partnership opportunity that you can work together with Christian counselors in your area to provide care and support through your education, but also provide professional treatment when a person's situation warrants that. So we have the directory with 350 licensed clinicians available to you around the country. So I would encourage you to check that out. Number 4, support groups provide care and community. One of the things that counseling, an hour a week, or even if you got 2 hours a week, and psychiatry with medication, they provide help in managing the symptoms. But there's something that churches with support groups can provide that the professionals cannot, and that is care and community. I've been honored and privileged to be part of Saddleback Church, where mental health is talked about openly. We have a monthly gathering where we have education and a sense of community once a month to be around others who also share their mental health challenges around the table discussions. But one of the most powerful times that I've been part of is these support groups. And we've had 7 rounds of going through this curriculum called Living Grace. And along with Living Grace, which is for individuals struggling with mental health challenges, there's also one called Family Grace, pictured here in the middle of your screen. And Family Grace is for family members and friends of those struggling with mental health. And these workbooks are now free thanks to the generosity of the partners and donors at Mental Health Grace Alliance. And this ministry provides this workbook both in digital for free and in print for a small fee you can order online. And both of these curriculums are used by thousands of churches around the world. And literally, for over the course of the 16 chapters, we go 1 chapter a week and have discussions about mental health related topics. We start with a scripture devotion, and then we have a practical exercise on how to learn to better take care of ourselves. And I've been hosting these groups on Zoom, and I literally read word for word what's in the workbook. And people have felt cared and supported over the past 3 years. And so it doesn't take a lot of training, literally 45 minutes on through 3 videos on the ministry website. And you can have some basic training to be good listeners, empathetic, don't give advice, provide a place of safety, and people can feel cared and supported. Very powerful curriculum that Mental Health Grace Alliance has produced, and I commend that to you. I have 5 or 6 other Christian mental health small group discussion guides and curriculums that you could also take a look at and consider using. So these resources are widely available, and what we like to do at Christian Asian Mental Health is to come alongside and help you learn how to navigate and decide how to use these resources. So again, free digital workbooks at mentalhealthgracealliance.org. And that's a picture of my Zoom meeting, or a cartoon of my Zoom meetings. Okay, and then fifth, so we talked about sermons, stories, seminars, support groups, and number 5 is Sabbath. Sabbath rhythm is a vital part of total health. God demonstrated it in creation of the world. God commanded it in the 10 Commandments. And even Silicon Valley is beginning to realize in the workspace marketplace, they're recognizing Sabbath is a healthy part of healthy living. And particularly for those of us in churches that tend to value working hard for God, we would do well to incorporate a Sabbath rhythm for the pastors, for the church leaders, and for everyone else. So those are the 5 S's to incorporate into your church as part of a basic mental health ministry, the 5S model for mental health ministry. There's many other S's that you could add to your church as it matures and develops its mental health ministry to provide more care and support to your church, your congregational members, as well as to your community, and be an outreach, because churches can reach more people every week compared to other kinds of interventions like conferences or books or seminars that is just advertised in the community, or a documentary film. Those are nice events, but churches can provide care and support on a weekly basis. Churches can open its doors and offer care and support to Christians and non-Christians in a very inviting and warm manner that can help people experience hope and healing in the name of Jesus. And so I would encourage you to consider this presentation, share it with your church leaders, how you might take that next step towards developing mental health ministry for your church. And other S's that could come to mind: subsidized therapy. You could help address the issue of affordability. You could provide scholarship for people in your church who might be called to become professional licensed clinicians, and they need some scholarship to further their studies. And there's other S's. I'm compiling a list of them. I'll share them with you in the weeks ahead as I learn about that. So let me turn off my screen share, and I would love to entertain your questions and make this interactive so that we can learn together. After this webinar, I'll be sending an email to all those who registered and invite you to be part of a cohort. You'll be first in line to be part of a cohort of churches that are ready and eager to launch mental health ministry, and we'll learn how to do it together. So you'll be invited and join this cohort. I have a limited number of spaces, 7 spaces for churches to launch their mental health ministry together in the months ahead. And we'll design the schedule and the format on how we do that together. But basically, we'll talk through these 5 S's, what you need to put together a ministry team or a committee, whatever that would look like in your church context, and then how to get all your critical church leaders to say, okay, we're going to become a church known for mental health ministry with care and support. How do we begin addressing it in your sermons? Share those stories, schedule some seminars, launch a support group, and do Sabbath. So we'll design that timeline together, learn from each other, and I'll be here, and our fellow churches will be part of that cohort so that we are encouraged and praying for one another in doing this vital part of ministry. Thank you for watching this webinar. I'd love to answer your questions. Please send it over to us at hello@camh.network, or you can contact me at dj@catalystwa.org. Would love to join you on this journey as we launch mental health ministries for as many churches as possible because people need the hope and healing of Jesus. Thank you for watching.